Welcome to the latest interview that we carried out as part of Ashfield's series of interviews. Back at the beginning of November, we caught up with Roger Madelin in his office down at Canada Water, where he talked us through some of the things he's doing at Canada Water and some of the things that he'd be better known for possibly in the past at Argent. I hope you enjoy what he had to say. Thanks.
Good to see you, Roger. Thank you for making time for this.
Good to see you.
Thank you. I thought we'd just start by a little bit of reminiscing, maybe. We do have some shared paths. How do you feel now that you're looking back? You've been away from Argent for a few years. I knew you during the Argent days, starting back in Governor's House and a bit of time at Brindley Place, but probably didn't do much. I haven't done much at King's Cross, but I'm sure your memories of King's Cross must be the thing that sits mainly in your mind at the moment, or are those things that sort of is it all part of the same memory?
I think we should have gone faster and further on environmental sustainability. Brindley Place, we won it in 1993. Kyoto was 1992. We took very seriously energy use of buildings. We thought people would like to open windows and probably would be prepared to tolerate slightly wider temperature variations.
Didn't necessarily get that, did they, at that time?
We liked the idea of locating buildings in easily accessible city centres because I got fed up with driving around the country and being stuck in traffic, and we enjoyed pushing the boundaries a bit, and we found a few companies that were interested to start that journey with us. British Telecom, initially after a tough start where they said they weren't interested, they became really interested, and they had this thing called Workstyle 2000, and we did 5 Brindley Place with Arup, and we didn't have fan coils, we had an upflow system, and we had opening windows and all of those kind of things, and we worked out the energy savings were 150,000 a year, but in the scheme of things, that was a tiny drop in the ocean. Energy's kind of always been too cheap in some ways, but obviously for those that can't afford it to heat their home, it's always been too expensive. And the world kind of just wasn't that interested, were they? The government said, they'd only take BREEAM, excellent buildings, and then they found there weren't many around, and then they found that. And I was still passionate, about climate change. Mrs. Thatcher had done the great speech, in '89, was it, to the UN? I kind of pretend I'm a scientist, but I'm obviously not.
I think we all
and it was just disappointing. And at King's Cross, we tried to take it further. We did the big combined heat and power district heating system, which, looking back on it, was the wrong thing to do, but it's the right thing to do at the time. But
I think,
Ken Livingstone was talking about renewable energy and stuff. So I look back just really disappointed in that regard and frustrated that here we are, almost 30 years further on, and it feels like deja vu. And so I'm not allowed to talk about it at home because my wife just says, that is so boring, Roger. It's so depressing. Shut up. So on the positive side, hey, everyone's taking it a lot more seriously now. Yeah. And we've got an amazing opportunity at Canada Water to do 40 buildings that are absolutely exemplar and leading edge in low embodied carbon, low energy in use, etc., etc. So but I look back at Brindley Place particularly, where we started to try and do things differently. And from a urban point of view, putting the square in at Brindley Place and getting people to come there out of office hours and bring their families there for restaurants and there at weekends and kids playing in the fountains. And I look back fondly on that.
Have you been back there since?
I have. I was back there 6 weeks ago.
Right. What do you make of it now? Do you think the legacy is intact? Or I haven't been back for a long time. I haven't seen that. I know there's building work going on around Amplified as much as there's a few other new buildings as well.
There is, and I think the buildings, the 3 buildings that we connected together for Royal Bank of Scotland, are, I think, now being separated again. We designed them to be separate buildings,
up,
and we
yeah,
put them
join
together,
up.
and which is great. So that shows a little bit of forethought.
Yeah.
And it's looking good. It's looking good. It went to some good long-term owners, asset managers. I think Hines are still involved, aren't they? They're good guys. Going up there and seeing the fact that someone has actively managed it well and looked after it. On the one side, it's kind of annoying. You think, oh, I thought we were the only ones that could do that.
Yeah.
But then on the other side, you think this is great. There are, of course, there's other people who are really, passionate and keen about looking after stuff. It's the best way of making money, isn't it? So it looked good. It looked really good, and Birmingham looked really good. It's still too small as a city, but I love Birmingham.
Are there tricks to actually getting those schemes to happen? I love both Brindley Place and King's Cross. I think they were very successful as a punter, going to them and using them. But is there something in the way that you approach those projects at the beginning where you have to have a singularity of an idea, or do you back an architect with a master plan, or there must be a way that you've managed to get them. It was always a team effort, I guess. I always felt at Argent that it wasn't just about you, it was a team putting it together in the background. But do you think there are lessons from that other developers should be picking up on? Clearly lots of people love talking about Argent and talking about King's Cross as an exemplar, even across the world it gets its pundits. But do you think there's some magic in the formula that you had, not because you clearly started with some pretty amazing spaces in terms of size and scale, but are there things from the earlier parts of those developments that you would say, well, that's the trick, that's the magic you have to pull, and maybe you're doing some of that here now?
There's no magic. You need land. You need land that is developable in a place that's got the right fundamentals, and you need a political context that is going to be supportive of what you want to do. So Birmingham already had, after suffering the 70s and the 80s, hemorrhaging in terms of employment and not adapting fast enough to respond to the opportunities from the service sector. They held a big symposium called the Highbury Initiative, and it was for 3 days in the late 80s, where anyone that was interested came together, and they set out a vision to change Birmingham from the very optimistic 60s city, with the inner ring road, and still thinking manufacturing was going to support the area, to realising that the concrete collar was constraining it, and service sector businesses didn't want to go there, and manufacturing jobs had shed dramatically. That vision for improving Birmingham, changing Birmingham, with getting rid of the inner ring road substantially and punching out into 5 quarters, Brindley Place was one, where High Speed 2 is going. You had the jewellery quarter, you had the Chinese quarter, they used to call it, I think they now call it the market quarter and the education quarter. Without that, we wouldn't have gone up to Birmingham and thought, oh, here's 17 acres of opportunity. And as it happened, it was, that was 93, Rosehor, who owned it, had gone bust, the receiver was looking after it, and everyone said, oh, you got a SNIP, for 17 acres for 3.1 million. Well, it wasn't just 3.1 million, there was a lease agreement with the city, but you had to develop the first phase speculatively, so that you then had to put another 3.5 million in. You couldn't borrow any money to do speculative development, so there weren't that many people around, who would have been prepared to look at it. I'd been to university in Birmingham, that kind of helped. I was at Aston, so I knew the area, and I just think walking around land that large, where you realise that the city wants you to do something. They hadn't said this 17 acres should be like this, but you knew if you came up with something that you thought was good, you would have a dialogue, a positive dialogue with the city. And we met people from the city, politicians, and you couldn't tell whether it was a Labour politician or a Liberal politician then, or a Conservative. As it happened, they were all Labour we met, but they were all
all positive.
All for Birmingham. And when the politics changed up there and it became conservative, there was no change in that vision as to how they wanted Birmingham to come forward. So I think you need that political context, because otherwise, our democratic system, we have to get planning permission, and that's politics, and if the politics isn't with you, you're kind of wasting a lot of time and money. You can push sometimes. In Argent, we tried to do things that we thought the government wanted to do, like we tried to do an international rail freight terminal at Colnbrook in between the M4, M25 and the A4. It's gravel extracted, waste fill dump, next to Heathrow. We spent 6 years, we spent 10 million quid. It's Greenbelt though, so you might go, how the hell is that Greenbelt? Well, it's Greenbelt, and we were told we couldn't prove demand for rail freight, so how dare you take it out of Greenbelt? You go, well, we can't prove demand because there isn't any rail freight. But just what a waste of time, because the politics of Greenbelt and the lack of commitment about getting freight onto trains wasn't there. So we pushed. We thought it was a good argument, but it fell apart. And King's Cross, although the planning context that Camden had at the time was not right, it was 10 years out of date, and you could meet senior people in Camden who knew it was out of date, who kind of set that foundation that they knew they wanted to develop a new planning context. And the first meeting I had with the leader of Camden then, now Dame Jane Roberts, I just thought, here is a smart woman who's got a real vision, and this is going to be a collaboration. And back to yours, it wasn't me at Argent, it was a group of colleagues at Argent, it was consultants, but also it was the local authority and the politicians, and it's all about dialogue. It's creating, or it's being in a place where you can have that creative dialogue. And some of the input that Camden had, and the GLA that was forming at the time, there wasn't a mayor. The mayor came in, Ken Livingstone had certain visions, in a lot of areas were very visionary, and London has benefited hugely from his environmental and transport kind of visions, and not development, just build it, like go mad, go high density, but he did set that political planning context for London, that this is a global city, and development's okay, and developers aren't going to get up in the morning and let's say, let's build something really terrible that everyone will hate. Developers don't do that. There's very few bad buildings in London, as far as I know, built in the last 20, 30 years. And if they are bad, it wasn't intentional, was it? Developers don't go, let's do something really terrible.
People would think they might. People have that.
I know, well, that's politics, isn't it? Yeah.
But do you think this is more of a nasal gazing question, do you think your personality has evolved because you've had to mix with some very interesting, very important people over the years, that people like you because you come across as the guy that's got the confidence to do it? Or was that just your natural personality that was suppressed, or not even suppressed, but when you were younger was just waiting to sort of evolve into? I've always felt that you were very charismatic and had the lead, you brought people with you, whether on my side it was principally the construction and the teams that were there, but clearly you're describing interfacing with council leaders and local politicians. I'm assuming it's the same Roger that rocks up to those people and says, I'm Roger Madelin, I'm hoping to develop how many thousands of millions of square feet in your back garden. And what you see is what you get. Or do you moderate it a bit?
Well, I'm very lucky in that I have quite a large group of friends that I went to school when I was 5. And I met them then.
Yes. They go all the way back.
There were 6 of us walking for 3 hours on Saturday, and they were with me on that first day of school.
Yeah.
And they've stayed friends, and my best friend I actually met when I was 3, and unless we'd been out of the country for work or away somewhere, I talk to him every week and probably see him every two or 3 weeks, and we've been on huge expeditions. Now they tell me, answer the question, they tell me that I'm kind of the same.
Really?
In some ways I'm obviously mellower, believe it or not. I don't swear and rant quite as much. My wife will tell you otherwise. I think when I was younger, I was just more more aware that, you know, when you were talking to older people, you know, you had to respect the fact that they, you know, were probably going to know a lot more than you. You know that a lot of them don't in the end.
Yeah,
but you know, I think that assumption, you know, that senior people had got to seniority because they were good, but you know, that falls apart, doesn't it? And that's one of the disappointing things of getting older, along with some of the others. You know, you meet a politician, they're kind of on a pedestal, aren't they? You know, a lot of politicians are great, it's a tough job and all that, but you know, and that sort of gave me confidence. You meet senior people and you think, they're not really that good. You know, no, I could do that.
I know more than that. Yeah.
I could do that. I don't think I have changed really, Martin. You know, people say, you know, I'm a salesperson. I would say I'm not. But if I believe in something, you know, I will tell people why I believe in that, and they can either believe it with me or not, and then they're kind of with me. And that if that's selling, I'm a salesperson. But you know, I couldn't sell stuff if someone told me go and sell that and I didn't believe it. So everything I've been involved with, you know, luckily, if I believe it and people have got time or interest, you know, they tend to kind of get it as well. And then you build up this team, you know, and you create this dialogue, and you know, people really contribute and add, you know, because yeah, I can come up with an idea, but you know, when that idea is eventually delivered, yeah, it might have started with me, but it's damn sight better because, you know, it's had 50 people pulling it apart and adding to it and taking it away.
So what's the vision now going forwards in terms of what you're doing here? I met you a couple of years ago when you started, and you said, well, I won't be here at the end, but that may be changing. I don't know. There's obviously construction starting.
Yeah.
You've got your building starting out there somewhere. What's going to keep you coming here, or what's on the bucket list of things that you think, well, that's what Canada Water's going to do for me? Is it just the satisfaction that you're going to see another group of buildings evolve around another big site that people you'll be proud of, and there'll be an enjoyable process going through it, or is there something that you think, well, actually, if I get to the point where I've done this, I can say that's job done at Canada Water? Or maybe just tell us what you're doing here first, because we're presuming that people know what we're looking out the window at, but people watching this probably will go, I don't know what they're doing down there. I've seen a big master plan announced. I know they've got a couple of buildings underway, and I know they've got the print works. But beyond that, there's a lot more to it, isn't there?
Yeah. Psychologically, I committed to 5 years here. You know, and
how many have you done so far?
From a 6.
Oh, right.
So, and after Argent, you know, I started stepping down a couple of years before I left as an executive. You know, I then stayed for a couple of years as a consultant. But during that period of stepping back from Argent, you know, the debate about, you know, should I try and find a full-time job?
Yeah.
Should I carry on doing some of the stuff that I had started, you know, within Argent? And my wife and I kind of agreed a list. You know, everyone, you know, talks about life lists and, you know, personal, work-wise. We did it over 3 mornings.
Really?
In France, you know,
oh, right. You just
early morning having a cappuccino on the veranda of a hotel before the kids got up. Yeah, and I interviewed her the other mornings in between. You know, we had this kind of list of if you did a job, a full-time job, what criteria would it have to have? And literally the week we got back, Chris Grigg from British Land phones me up and says, "Do you want a cup of coffee?" So, yeah, sure. You know, I've been seeing him
before.
Yeah, he'd been around King's Cross a few times. I'd been around a couple of British Land developments. You know, developers, I'm sure, same as your business. You learn from each other, and most people are really open.
Yeah.
You know, you're very rarely direct competitors. You know, like and you just so yeah. I didn't know Chris that well, but yeah, you know, if I've seen him walking down the road,
might want to talk about. Or
we'd have a chat.
Just thought this would be a coffee.
He had. Said, you know, how can British Land, you know, buy into King's Cross? And I said, join the bloody queue, you know. Like, you know.
There's a lot of people
and he said,
that.
well, you know nothing about retail, and we're really good at retail, and you know, like you. But no, I didn't know what he was going to say. I thought it would be interesting, and he said, do you want to run Canada Water? And I said, probably not, Chris, but you know, thanks.
Nice cup of coffee,
thanks for asking, mate. But you know, like. How much land have you got? And he said, 46 acres. You go, really? Is it freehold? He said, almost. Well, he wasn't quite right, but
You weren't checking the details.
Can you get vacant possession? He said, yeah. I said, well, wasn't quite right on that, but we can now. I said, what's it in the book for? And he went, said that's reasonable for 46 acres. Like, what do you want to do? And if you've got the money, is this long-term stuff? And I went, okay, I'll go and have a look. And I came here with Jane in the summer of 2015, and we were just completely blown away. And within half an hour, Jane said, "You're going to take this job."
Really? She told you?
Yeah. And she said, "But don't do it for more than 5 years."
Right.
So that optionality of and 5 years kind of worked well with the kids and stuff like that. I could not have pretended to believe that it would have been such an amazing opportunity. I checked out British Land. I knew them a bit. Nice guys. I knew Nigel Webb a bit. I knew Adrian Penfold a bit. I knew Miles. I knew Chris a bit. I'd spoken to designers and contractors. I'd never heard a bad thing, but you never really know what they're like. I arrived, and I still can't believe it, Martin. Everyone has been so nice and so supportive. And then because Canada Water is a little bit different, it's still British Land. We've got all the support and all the knowledge and all the experience. But it is kind of a little bit different. And for me, I didn't think it at the time, but it was like going back Argent 20 years. It was like the late 90s, early 2000s with Argent, where someone said, "Here's loads of money."
Go and play with the toys.
When you've got a reason to spend it, like, come back to us. It's there, it's yours, but obviously you have to convince us it's right. You can kind of employ who you want. Like, we've got some good people in British Land, and we've got some amazing people who were at British Land before I walked in. But you can supplement the team, and it's just like here I am 20 years ago. But it is a bit more supporting. I can't believe I get paid for it, really, Martin. Yes,
You do.
And will I still be here in 10 years? No, because it'd be a disaster, wouldn't it, for these guys, unless I'm sweeping the floors or making the tea. Succession's the hardest thing. So and I was thinking about that from the minute I walked in.
Yeah.
But at the moment, I think people still want me around, and I'm delighted to get up in the morning and contribute, and it's a very exciting time. We're probably 2.5 years behind where we should have been in that 5 years. So does that mean 2.5 years I'm out the door? It's too nice and it's too exciting, and I'm not going to make any projections now.
So when I was researching, or actually it was helping me research, we realised that you had a CBE.
Yes. Collective Buggers Efforts, yeah.
That's what it stands for. Well, I didn't really know when that arrived or what the history was to it in terms of...
You missed the 6 o'clock news, did you then?
I did. I don't always have to catch up with everybody famous that...
Yeah.
How did that come about, or what was the...
I received a letter in 2005 and I collected it from the Prince of Wales in May 2006, and it's for services to sustainable development. Why did I get it? Because the government was still talking positively about environmental and sustainability.
Yeah.
I think it had launched. This is me being a bit cynical. I think it had launched a few initiatives.
Yeah.
And they probably said, we probably should find someone in the private sector that's doing what we told them to do. Yeah. Anyone know anyone? And they go round and they go, well, not her or not him, or he's upset them. And they kind of ended up with me and they go, well, what's he done? And we got this, sustainability award, a few years ago. Construction stuff's quite interesting.
Or something. Yeah.
Construction stuff. And they did that environmental. They've got this and got that. So I think it was a whittled down the shortlist. I was probably the only one left on it that hadn't upset someone. And so I was. It's a huge privilege.
Is that other things? Does it open doors? Does it ever get?
No, it doesn't even get me to the front of a restaurant queue, mate. It kind of is collective, you know, like you said, you know, it wasn't me at Argent, it was the team, you know, whether it was 2 or 3 people or 26 people or whatever. And I'm just very lucky that, you know, when you knew me at Argent, I was the development director and then the chief exec. You know, I was lucky to be running a team. So yeah, they gave me the CVE. Doesn't mean I was the most passionate in the business. I think I was, by the way. But you know, Andre and stuff like that, and there's other colleagues. You know, we were all really keen to see what we could do and how far you could push it, and I still am. And you know, obviously now it's just getting huge support for all the reasons we know.
Yeah. So I always tend to finish these interviews with a couple of more personal questions. If that's all right. People always try and say to me, what did you find out about Roger when you interviewed him that you didn't already know? So I kind of know from some of the things we've been doing together recently about some of the things you do when you're not here, and most of it seems to revolve around 2 wheels. Mm-hmm. Is that the main passion for you away from the office, or there are other areas that you'd say, no, Martin, if you knew me in my private life, you'd see me doing all sorts of different things?
It's been 2 wheels for a while.
I should just clarify, those are 2 push bike wheels, aren't they?
Yeah, well, there's one with a 140 horsepower
right.
shoved
Still.
in them, but I don't ride that much. It's so scary. But I keep going past motorbike shops, with my nose against the window, thinking, I don't like riding a motorbike in London. It's like push bikes, much better. My real passion, if you look at what have I done out of work most often from the age of 18 till now, it's been in the air. So it's either been started flying gliders, sailplanes, you sit in, close the canopy and stuff.
I do remember going up in your glider.
And then I went to hang gliding, which was just amazing, and travelled extensively over Europe and Australia and South America. I was safe, I was okay, but I was blown away by the skill and passion of other pilots. So I was kind of like a half decent kind of club pilot, but I was never going to get into the world championships or anything like that, like some of my friends did. Yeah. I then went back into gliding and was an instructor for 15 years, and so most weekends I was either flying on my own or teaching people. And right from the beginning, I've always had a private pilot's license as well. My dad, used to have one. He took me up in a Tiger Moth when I was 10. So, and I've had a share in a vintage biplane for over 30 years, Booker Jungmann. But that's been out of service for almost 5 years because the engine blew up over Leicester, and it's being rebuilt. It's just about to come.
At the time?
No, I wasn't. One of my syndicate partners was, and the engine stopped, and he landed safely in the field. Yeah. He was fine. So that is just about to come back, and of course I'm not current, so I'm going to have to get current, and I'm going to
spend. On the list when
and I share a hot air balloon with my brother. I've got 100 hours in a hot air balloon. I've got 1,400 hours in sailplanes and 250 hours in aerobatic biplanes. Well, I don't anymore. So I've been on a push bike, which is great, and I've always had 2 wheels, a push bike in my day, whether it was cycling to school or whether it was after probably 4 years of driving around the country as a building contractor. I then started cycling to work in my mid-20s, and I've never stopped. And one of my conditions with Jane of another job was I had to have cycling in my day.
Just to finish up then, a sort of slightly jokey question. You've talked about wheels. I wonder whether, if you were given the freedom of choice, whether you'd be buying a conventional scooter or whether you would get an electric scooter. Or whether you think electric scooters are a scourge, or whether they're things that are inevitable.
I think active travel's good. But I also think if you're not active, being in a 1.5 ton box pumping out poisonous fumes with 4 empty seats, in urban areas is pretty crazy. I know why we've got to where we are. So I think electric scooters are a great thing in principle. I think London needs to go a long way before they become safe. I wouldn't get one because I hate small wheels and potholes. You know, I hate potholes with big wheels. But, I just, you know.
Getting into meetings, then when you go to a meeting, say from here.
I'll have a bike. I'll have a, you know, whether it's a fold-up bike or a push bike. And I think electric bikes are going to be great. You know, you can start to see quite a few of them. And if you go cycling, you know, in Europe particularly, you know, almost, I don't know, you know, every other one is electric, and I think that's terrific. And when they get lighter and better, and I find it very strange that there aren't more people getting the real joy of cycling. You know, I can kind of understand because it's a bit dangerous out there, but London is getting better. So no, I wouldn't get a scooter, but I think they're great, and you know, to get people out of cars or out of the tube, because you're still kind of active, aren't you? Breathing in the air.
I didn't ask you when we were talking about cycling, but do you still have a bucket list of events or places that you want to cycle to, or routes that you want to take, or is that something you just do on each year to come place that somebody says, oh, you want to do this, we're going off to do so and so, and you go, yeah, that sounds a great idea, but could we do this as well?
Well, every week for about 20 years of my life, I would go with, you know, my mate from the age of 3 and others. We'd do Morocco, or we'd do Central Turkey, or we'd do Arizona, or we'd do Zimbabwe. And on my bookshelf there's Iran, Rough Guide to Iran, and there's Syria, Rough Guide to Syria. And we were going to go to Iran cycling for a week, and then there was some student riots, and we thought Syria or Lebanon. And we went to Lebanon, which was amazing. You know, we kind of, obviously we want to go back there, and obviously you can't go back to Syria. So I'd love to cycle around, you know, some of those more unusual countries, but probably places like Georgia or something like that, you know, that is going to be different. Albania, very mountainous, you know, probably a little bit safer than it was, you know, 20 years ago when we looked at Albania. I love, you know, starting somewhere and kind of like doing a big circuit and discovering places.
Attract or hidden castles or hidden villages out there.
Yeah. So the best cycling I've done is across Spain. We've done the 2 big pilgrims routes, you know, the Camino de Frances and the Camino de Plata from Seville due north. And I wouldn't mind doing them again because, you know, they are extraordinary.
It's stunning scenery.
Yeah. So I like cycling in France and going up Mont Ventoux and doing some of the Tour de France stuff. But you know, they're getting quite busy now. You know,
quite busy, not too big, not too challenging.
I'm all right going up hills.
Right. Yeah. Not good coming down.
Well, I'm all right coming down, but you know, some people are going faster than me now.
All right, lovely. Thank you very much. That's very interesting.
Thank you.
Thank
you for all your work and friendship over the years. And yeah, we've got a few more years ahead of us. Hopefully. Yeah. Hopefully. Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Good.
Cheers.